When we first start talking to our clients about their expected plans for retirement, one of the things that we run into is a little bit of confusion over what some of the terms that they might see online or in videos like this mean when they talk about exit planning versus succession planning. Hi, my name is Barrett Young and I'm a partner here at GWCPA, and we specialize in succession planning for clients. And I wanted to use this video to clear up some of the differences between exit planning and succession planning when we define these terms. The primary driver typically when we're talking about exit planning and succession planning is going to be the buyer. Is the buyer external to the business, as it would be in exit planning generally, or is the buyer internal to the business? The primary goal of exit planning is going to be a payday, a retirement buyout for you to transfer the ownership of that business to somebody else. That's what your primary goal is, and because of that, the valuation of the company is going to be the driver in most of the discussions. Whereas with succession planning, the driver tends to be more the success of that incoming generation. Succession planning does not always mean parent to child. It can mean employer to a key employee, mentor to a mentee. The emphasis in succession planning, therefore, is not on the valuation of the company as much as the continuity of the company. Building a foundation and passing that along to somebody else so that they can continue to grow on the business that you have already established. With exit planning, when we talk about time frames, exit planning tends to be a hard time frame. Once you've decided that you want to sell, you locate a buyer, and there's a set date in mind when ownership will transfer from one party to the other party. With succession planning, this time frame tends to be a little bit fuzzier, just because it can be a gradual process whereby the incoming generation takes over ownership year after year. When we're talking about exit planning, we're looking at a 1 to 3 year window for the successful transition of that business. 1 to 3 years, deals can be done in less time than a year, but ideally 1 to 3 years is going to give enough time for due diligence, identifying the right buyer, making sure that all of the legal issues are taken care of. When we're talking about succession planning, it could be a 5-year window or longer. We like to work with clients in the 5 to 8 years leading up to the transition of leadership so that we can make sure all the processes are in place. Because of that, exit planning tends to have a harder time frame. At some point in the future, June 2025, I will be exiting this business and someone else will be entering this business. All the lawyers, all the documents are going to work towards that date. With succession planning, the timeline tends to be fuzzier. It should still, we recommend, have a certain path of progression. We want to be at this point by this date, we want to be at this point by this date, and at this date, the transition will absolutely occur, but it tends to be fuzzier. One of the big external influences on the timing of an exit plan is going to be the market. Changes in the market, because the valuation is the primary driver of the transition of that company. How the economy is doing, what the interest rates are doing, the market on business acquisition is going to play a lot bigger role in whether that deal goes through or not, whereas the primary obstacle to pulling off a successful deal in succession planning is going to be just procrastination. Again, I don't want to have these discussions, I don't want to face my own mortality, I don't want to face the fact that I won't be doing this for the rest of my life, or just we're not going to have that discussion right now because it's uncomfortable, and so we're going to continue to put it off. When we talk about minefields with exit planning, the primary minefields are going to be legal minefields. So are both parties coming with a good faith position in order to make this deal happen? Is there suitability there? The attorneys are going to be working everything out on the buyout agreement and everything like that. Are there any risks that need to be mitigated in the transfer of this business? So most of the minefields are going to be legal. Whereas with succession planning, one of the things that leads to a lot of that procrastination is just the relational minefield. You tend to stick around as a first generation leader when you've transitioned to succession planning business, whether you're family and you see them at Christmas and Thanksgiving, or you just still have a relationship with that employee that you've shepherded along the way. A lot of those minefields, uncomfortable conversations are due to relational challenges. When we talk about who's actually going to be making this deal happen, in exit planning, because the minefields tend to be legal, it will be most likely a business broker and a corporate attorney that are going to be driving most of the conversations around that transition. Whereas with succession planning, depending on whether it's a familial pass or not, it could be estate planning attorneys, a family office, financial advisors that will be driving the majority of those conversations. There's going to be some significant differences in the financing that's going to make these deals happen between the two as well. With exit planning, you will see owner financing, so owner retains a note and receives payment over a number of years from the buyer. You will also see private equity involved in this, along with traditional bank financing. But private equity is going to be involved. Actually, with exit planning, you tend to see higher owner notes involved in that because it does rotate more around the valuation. And so the owner will be typically required to retain a note in more cases than not. Whereas with succession planning, you will see owner financing, you will see traditional, you could even see private equity, it's possible. But you also have gifting that can come into play with succession planning, especially if it is a familial succession plan. You could use gifting with the annual exclusion for gifts. Planned far enough out in advance, you could actually gift ownership in that company year after year after year based on a valuation that gets it underneath the annual gift exclusion. And so the transfer could actually happen tax-free to both parties in that case. You don't typically see that in an exit plan. Because of that, when we talk about the tax situation, exit planning is actually a simpler tax situation. Again, because of that hard date, the transition happens in 1 year, typically. Whereas with succession planning, especially if we're talking about gifting, we're talking about estate plans, trusts, family limited partnerships, the tax situation can be a little bit more intricate, complicated with succession planning. Ultimately, despite all of the differences between exit planning and succession planning, it's going to come down to one key thing: which one is the best option for you? I will say for both of them, a longer time frame is better than a shorter one. It leaves your options open. It helps you identify that buyer. It helps you make sure that the company continues after you are gone. You do not want to put this off either way. You want to be having these conversations. And it's best, if you are in succession planning, to be taking some of the advantages of exit planning into account when you have these discussions. Hopefully this video has been helpful for you to better understand the difference between exit planning and succession planning, and it's helped you consider a few things in your own plans for retirement within your business. If this video has been helpful, please go ahead and like this video and leave a comment down below which one you are thinking might be the future for your company. And I'll see you on the next one.